Right. Good morning and welcome to our presentation today. My name is Katura Cappadonia. I'm the outreach consultant at the Southern Tier Library System. And today's presenter is Dania Swade, who is the Young Adult Services Librarian at the Baldwinsville Public Library in Baldwinsville, New York. Dania has worked in youth services for several years with a focus on revitalizing teens' interest in library programs and services through diverse collection management and innovative programming. She manages multiple collections, including print, graphic novels, audio, music, vinyl, and the development and maintenance of the Library of Things. She also prioritizes fostering a welcoming, safe space for teens in the library with staff and within the local community. So, good morning, Dania. She's going to present for us today on Things, Things, Things Beyond Books and Words with a Library of Things. So, I will turn it over to her.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I hope that I'll talk a little bit about what I've done here at Baldwinsville, starting a Library of Things and expanding and maintaining it. And some of the things I've also learned working and talking with other librarians and their experience with Library of Things. So hopefully you can take home some tips and confidence, at least, in starting your own Library of Things. So again, yes, I'm the Young Adult Services Librarian here at Baldwinsville. I started in 2019, and when I did, we had already these two thing items, let's say, that we were circulating. We have a Leap into Dirt kit that contains all the material you need to plant flowers or like small vegetables. Seeds were also included in the kit. And we had these like kilowatt energy reader machines, except they were kept in like two separate locations. We didn't advertise that we had them. They weren't on display even anywhere. So easily missed by patrons. So after I'd been there for a few months, I started a vinyl collection. And in conjunction with the vinyl collection, I wanted to circulate a record player. So it made sense to then, now that we have multiple physical items, to market them together as one singular collection. So that's usually my first big tip, is that most of the time, if you have physical objects in your library, even if you think they're unrelated, you already have basically everything you need to start a Library of Things. You can put them together in one spot with a Library of Things collection code and a Library of Things shelf location, and basically free, and you're ready to get started. And it makes a big difference and a lot easier to attract patron attention, I think. But we'll get into more detail about that. So currently, I have a specific budget line. We call it our innovation line for the Library of Things, which we'll also go over later. I think is essential that you have separate budget for it, but we'll talk more about that. So next, step one, I've broken it down in steps in terms of you want to get started, and is to create a team. I think it is essential that you have a point person. So I'm the point person for the Library of Things. So if items come back damaged, or if patrons have questions, or they're calling because they don't know how to use an item, that all comes down to me. The final decision-making also comes down to me. But it's a big job to handle all on my own. So in collaboration with the other librarians here at Baldwinsville, I get recommendations for selecting items from them. What we're talking about right now is like a cassette tape conversion. So if people want to convert their old cassette tapes to DVDs or digital, so they'll tell me we have this idea, or this was a patron request. And if they have ideas, if they see specific items, they'll reach out to me. We have some staff members better at developing MARC records, so we work with them as a team. And I'm now the marketing person here, but before we did have more people doing marketing, and it was good to involve them in that step as well. So definitely a main point of contact, but you're not going to be able to do it all on your own. So in relation to that is why you have step two, which is brainstorming, which is gathering as much of your staff as you can together in the initial planning stages. So meet with different staff members in your branch and also within the branches, I think is a great idea. Get some of the circulation staff together, meet and talk to them, especially because they're going to be in charge of checking, most of the time, at least for us, they're the ones who check the material when they come in. How do they want that done? What ideas do they have to make it easier and more streamlined for them? If you have a specific department who's developing the MARC records, talk to them about how long of a process that is. What kind of information would they need? Do they need an OCLC number? Would they be able to do it themselves? There are some records already like in WorldCat for physical items. Would you be able to pull from those? Those are just like basic conversations to get started. And it's very beneficial to have different opinions from people who work specifically in different departments. And then the other one also in these initial planning stages is if you're going to expand your library of things besides the current stuff that you have, you want an assessment plan of how you're going to determine, do you want to set specific standards of what is success? Do you have specific things you want to track? What are you going to look at to long-term versus short-term? And we'll go over more of like what we do here in terms of assessment planning and reviewing, but just to have some general ideas of, we'll check back in 1 month and this is what we hope to see. We'll check back in 6 months and this is what we hope to see. So all those conversations are really great and comforting to develop those first initial steps. And then after that, you want to start formalizing your budget. I would say it's never too soon to get a specific budget number and start working from there. So this is how I usually break it down. It changes slightly depending on the item, but in general, I have a certain budget from that innovation line every year, and I try to spend about 75% of that on new items. It might actually be duplicates of items that are already popular. I'll talk a little bit about the Tony boxes, and that's our most popular item. If I had a library of things of like just 20 Tony boxes, our patrons would love it. Such a popular item. So not necessarily brand new things every time, or even just like updating things. If you've got an older camera and you want to update it with something new, still keep both and just invest in some of those new items. And then when I say maintenance, there's a few different things like you'll have to maintain. There's components that sometimes will need to be updated, SD cards, charging cables, things like that, that are a little bit, individual items are less expensive, but you're going to have to update them a lot, especially charging cables and cords. We used to include extra ones in the kit, but then they'd go missing or they would both break at the same time instead of just monitoring it as frequent, like pretty frequently, and swapping out things that were broken. Especially with this became important with the record player and getting the needles in check. We used to include the extra needles in there and they were so easy to lose track of. They're delicate items, so they could also break in the kit. So it makes more sense to kind of have the back stock stored somewhere. I store them in my office, and then just to check it regularly. Repairs, I know that this tends to be the biggest hurdle in starting a library of things often is things are going to break. They're going to be too expensive. They're going to break frequently, too expensive to fix, and too hard to maintain. In our experience, I've only ever had, now that I've been doing it for almost 3.5-ish years, only one item has ever broke, and the screen on the GoPro camera cracked early on. It was still completely functional. And I learned some top tips from that as well, which was in relation to that 75% in new items. A part of that should also be investing early in as many and like as protective cases as you can. I did not have a case for the GoPro. It was my mistake. Get those heavy duty cases, their screen protectors, all of that in terms of when you're purchasing an item for the library of things, all of that has to come out of that same budget as well. Those are things to consider. And the other part of repairs, you might form a partnership if you have someone in the community like a repair shop that they can help you inexpensively fix with the repairs. That's what we did for the GoPro. A lot of times, especially if it's just a cracked screen, it can be pretty easily repaired. So you just want that also in your budget line. And then we always have at least 5% of just in case, because who knows what's going to happen. Or sometimes someone's going to donate something to you and maybe you want it in the library of things, but there's other things you have to do to prepare it beforehand, things like that. But this is how I've broken down my budget for the most part.
Dania, we do have a question.
Sure.
Someone asked, does this budget include things like museum or park passes that get renewed annually? And where would you put
Yes.
that in the budget?
So I use that as the new items, but we do have passes. I have a slide that has like a list of some of the things we use. So we have some passes that are paid for by the county. So us as an individual library don't have to pay for. That would be like the, not the Empire passes, the county passes that we have that are just access to the Onondaga County parks and facilities. That one's paid for by the county. We pay for the Empire passes. We pay for our museum passes. And we have 2 museum passes, one for the Corning Museum of Glass and one for the Art Museum here in Syracuse. And that just comes out of the new item budget line, and they're a little bit expensive. Yes, but they do circulate really well and patrons really like them. That's another one that, like, later when we talk about assessment, might be interesting to look at, especially if you have a smaller budget and other libraries in your county or in your system have it. It might not be one of the early things you want to pick up. But there's the other item that the county purchased for us were the Chromebooks and hotspots. So that's their kit. So even though we get to we have 10 that we circulate to our patrons, I don't have to worry or include that in any of my budget line. If anything broke, maintenance, anything like that, I just send that straight to Central Library downtown and they take care of it for me. So sometimes it works out really well, but all of the museum passes and stuff and such do come out of our innovation line. So the next step I would take that I also wish I had thought of before purchasing the items even is how it's going to circulate. So you want a rough plan of where am I going to store these? So for us, we have a big cabinet by the circulation desk, and it has glass doors and a big sign on the side that shows what items are inside of it, and it's locked. So that's what we decided to use. And then the circulation staff have to come around and unlock it and grab it from the cabinet. So it's not too inconvenient. But I know libraries often do pictures of the items and maybe they'll put them on a pegboard, or they'll keep all the items on a shelf behind the circulation desk maybe. Just planning out these ideas early as best as you can is a really good idea. And working with the circulation staff and the other librarians or other members of your Library of Things team to determine how long are these going to circulate for. Most of our items are 3 weeks with no renewals. If you're going to make it holdable, are you going to restrict the pickup location? For us, they're just not holdable, period, even if they want to pick it up here from Baldwinsville. That's what we settled on, and I would consider it like a collection, your Library of Things collection. And so you want consistency. So everything that has the Library of Things collection code follows these same guidelines, even if some of the things like the museum passes would be easy to send through the delivery. It's much easier just to have one set of rules that you can, to the best of your ability, stick to. And then the other thing we learned is presentation. So for all staff, but especially circulation staff, since it's usually them who open to check what's in the kit, an idea of what the item is before you're going to put it in that cabinet. I like to show them what it is, how it works, have them play with it, have them use it. You're going to get also good ideas in terms of watching other people interact with it. If you want to include instructions with the item, watching other people interact with it is the best way to write clear and concise instructions, because you're the one who had already done so much research before you purchase it. It's going to be a little more intuitive for you, and you want that first time unboxing experience. So present If you've got staff meetings, bring your new items to the staff meetings and have everyone use it and hang out with it and play with it. And that way also in terms of when it comes in and before it goes out and when it comes in, you probably want your circulation staff to check it and make sure all the items are included. It's going to be a lot easier for that. And then in terms of maintenance, that is my responsibility. So I try to at least usually like once a week, once every 2 weeks, depending on the item, just go through what's in the library of things and make sure like the SD card is clear from the GoPro. Or we do circulate a Lego kit that is a little tricky. But I have that, we'll go over a little more how I've broken that down so it's easy for me to see which pieces are included if there's any pieces missing. But distinguishing that is also important before you begin. What our responsibility is going to be in terms of when it's immediately returned, who's looking at it and making sure, and who's looking at it long-term to make sure that it's still sustainable for more patrons. So you want to work out those details before you really begin as best as you can. It's going to change over time, but there's not enough. The more planning you do, the easier the transition to begin. So,
Tanya, I'm sorry,
yes.
we
Sure,
have
no, go
another
ahead.
question.
Sure.
Would you recommend including a photo or diagram of the kit contents?
That is a great question. So I do have some of those. So this page, this is a list of all the Library of Things items we have. I'm not sure if I included the one we just added, which is a VR headset. Not a VR headset, a 360 camera. I'm researching VR headsets now. So what I do is, I might have more photos afterwards, is we'll talk a little bit about packaging. On the outside of the packaging is where I put this tag. And on one side has the name of the kit. So this is a projector. So it's a projector and screen would be on the other side. And this side says items included, and it's a breakdown of all the items, including all the prices. So not only does the patron immediately see what should be in there and the cost in case something is missing or damaged, the circulation staff, when they pull it out of the cabinet, can hold the tag in one hand and just open it and quickly see what's in it. The only one that I do a photo for to show picture by picture what's in it is the 360 camera. We used that to create like one of those tours of the library that you see on like Google Maps and everything, those 360 tours. That one is the only one that also has limited access. Not all patrons can check it out. It's restricted right now because we received it through a grant. But that one, I took pictures of everything that's in the kit. I took a picture of what the kit looks like as soon as you unzip it, and individual pictures of all the items with like a little check so that they can make sure when they package it back up, they can hold one laminated photo to see how it should be packaged. And then there's other laminated photos of each of the components because it has the camera, it has a tripod, it has a few different cases in it, it has a few different lenses. So if you're doing something big like that, I would say try to take photos of each individual component, maybe put 6 on one piece of paper, and then definitely take a picture of what it looks like when it's packaged well and include those inside of the kit. But if it's something a little more straightforward, like that projector that just has a cord, a projector, and a screen, and then some cables, just a list. And this list is also included inside of the kit. And that's enough. We very rarely get things brought back with missing pieces. Sometimes the most common, of course, is like a cord that's missing. But we also label all the items. So you can kind of see on the GoPro, even the attachment piece that you screw in to attach the GoPro to the tripod has our little sticker on it that has our library name and address. And I've written, I use Sharpie to write on the items to make sure that people know it's ours. All the cords have a tag that says, that's just our stick. It's just a printed label that I fold in half so that they know, again, it's our item. But even for like this GoPro, it has a few pieces. I just list what's in there and put that list on the outside of the package and inside as well. For the most part, it works the best. Taking photos of each individual components for the 360 camera did take a lot of time. So I'm a little reluctant to do it for all of them. I did, we'll see one for the Lego. Is that next? Oh, I'll talk about the Lego kit next and how we mapped that one out. That also took a lot. But so after you've worked out some of the beginning details in terms of now you have a plan for circulation, you have a rough assessment plan, you have a team, you can start selecting items, which is the fun part. I would say that typical phrase, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, contact other libraries. You can contact me, of course, or just other libraries in New York State, go through NYLA, you can go through the ALA to see what other libraries are circulating if you want. A library in our county just started doing like electric guitars and amps. And we have one library that circulates a bunch of tools and like soldering irons. And so reach out to them. They're going to have this info on their website anyway. Reach out and ask questions about what's going well, how they package it, etc. Where I get a lot of good ideas also is one, like gift guides. So when people sing, especially around the holiday season, seeing what's popular that way. And also Instagram, TikTok, Etsy is also really good. Seeing what's popular there and also seeing what's advertised there. Instagram and TikTok in particular, you're going to get a lot of ads. And if you have a library, Instagram and TikTok, the ads you're seeing, your followers are also going to see pretty frequently. And so it's a great way to create that connection. Okay, I keep seeing that ad. I know our patrons probably that follow us on TikTok see it as well. It looks interesting. Let's get it. We'll add it to our library of things. They come in and see, oh, that's like exactly what I saw on TikTok. How interesting that the library has it. Let me take that, give it a try. You stay current, you stay up to date. And even if they're like slightly annoyed by seeing the same ad all the time, they're going to be curious and want to take it out and try it. So using those new resources where your patrons, especially your younger patrons, are at, I think is a great place to start. And then in terms of selection, what I would recommend once you start purchasing new items is a mixture of items and kits. So what we have here is a Tony box. If you haven't heard before, it's a child-friendly speaker. So that's the speaker box. And these are the characters. So you plop a character on top, it's magnetic, and it has stories, songs, audiobooks that it will read aloud to the kids. And then if they tap it from one side, it skips. If they tap it from the other side, it'll like fast forward, and they can tip it to make it like goes in different directions. If you tip it, I think it like speeds up the play. So in the box, you get like 5 characters that you can one at a time put on top is what I'm trying to say. And it also includes like the charging port and headphones. So it's just like one item that we purchased, and it came in its own kit even. It's like its own packaging case, and it's super popular. People really love it. It is a lot of fun. I didn't think it would be so popular, but I think because it's kind of different and very child friendly and indestructible, it has become very popular. But like that, or like the GoPro, it's one singular item. Starting with one of those is great. And then starting also with like a kit that you assemble yourself. So what we have is our stop motion animation kit. It's just a document viewer camera, and included in this lunch bag, which I'll talk about in a minute, is also characters. And then I just printed some backgrounds on cardstock, and you've got like a stop motion animation how-to book. So we combined these items into one kit to make so that kids and families can take it home, adults, whomever, and make their own stop motion animation video. And in it is instructions on how to just access a free website where you just, this camera just plugs right into your computer via USB, and basics on how to, you just plug and go basically to get started. So we included, instead of just circulating a document viewer camera, we decided to assemble it like a kit to give it at least an idea of how it could be used. Of course, if they just want to use the document viewer camera to teach, like to tutor virtually over Zoom, great. It works that way. But these kits are also just like a fun, very engaging, and often like inexpensive way to get started. So instead of buying like fancy stop motion, like pre-made things, a lot of times you can assemble it yourself with equally excellent products. So we'll move to the next one where we talk about packaging some more. So the top tip I have learned is hard lunch boxes or soft, like we use some of those softer but padded lunch boxes, honestly are the best way to package items. I mean, besides this hard case for the GoPro, that's pretty specific, kind of specific for what all the items inside of it. Everything else we just use the either like the Lego kit, we use a tote bag because it's just a Lego kit. But for the rest, we just use hard padded lunch boxes, and it works out great. They're inexpensive. They're just as secure. They have a strap usually. For the 360 camera, we put it in a like padded, thick laptop backpack. So a lot of times those work just as well. I think they work just as even better, less expensive, and just as secure. So, but those are things you want to keep in mind in terms of purchasing items. So that's 75% of the budget. You've got to include pricing for these things, including like, this is how I circulate the Lego kit. It's the Mandalorian and Child. And so each one's broken down into a plastic storage container, and I have separated it out by color and vaguely by type. And there's a little chart that goes with it that shows how many pieces and which pieces are inside each box. And it's a risk to circulate, as you would think. It took quite a bit of time for me to make that chart, but it has circulated a bunch and I am still not missing any pieces. I probably check this like once every week or two, depending on how often I see it checked out. But we've made it really easy with the plastic storage container that has all the squares already, and they just have to plop the pieces back in when they're done. So in terms of like when you're thinking about which items to purchase, this has to be equally in mind. How am I going to package these items? You could put them in plastic containers like Tupperware. The lunch boxes again is great. And then some just simple as tote bags. And then another idea of how the tags work. These are just like laminated, like the plastic, like you would wear like at a conference. It's like on a lanyard and it just has like a little plastic covering that we just slide the tag on. And that's also where we include our barcodes. So hopefully the circulation staff, they always open it to check what's in it anyway. But in terms of checking out and everything, all of that is right on the outside tag. So once you've selected the items and you've got your packaging and you know what kind of packaging to purchase, and you've worked and the items have arrived, and you've packaged them together and you're ready to start circulating, you can have what is a big debate now with Library of Things is, do you need a waiver? What are you going to put in your waiver? Do they need to sign it, etc. So when I first started, we had waivers like this one that I made, and everyone had to sign before they could check out any of the items. Like if they wanted the GoPro, they had to sign this one specifically. If they wanted the stop motion animation kit, they had to sign that one specifically. And we made notes on their account that said, this person has already signed it, etc. It became too much to track. I don't blame the circulation staff for being busy and not having the chance to sign it all the time, or people sign it but don't make a note and then they have to sign. It was too much. So I know a lot of libraries still do. So that would have to be a choice that you make. Of course, I would talk with the director specifically in case you want to get whatever library lawyer you have just to double check, because if you are circulating things like a soldering iron, you might want more waivers and liability waivers versus a stop motion animation kit. But I don't require people to sign waivers anymore to check out any of the items. I do include these pieces, this loan agreement inside of the kit. And it includes the price breakdown once again of each individual item, and that they are responsible for the replacement or the maintenance of the items in case they're missing, in case they return it and it's broken. I'm thinking of like updating the tags on the outside. It also says, because we have the price breakdown, I'm thinking of adding something that also says you're responsible for any missing or damaged items. But for now, this loan agreement is in here. It's just in the kit, but they're not required to sign anything before they check the items out. If you want ideas of other waivers, I do have copies of what other libraries have done when I was working on it, if you need advice on that. And then the waiver often would include like restrictions in terms of who's allowed to circulate the items. And for us, it's just as long as you don't have over $5 in fines. Some are age restricted, some items, just the 360 camera. But for the most part, as long as you don't have over $5 in fines, you can check it out. We assume we've decided that what they sign when to agree for library, to sign up for a library card, it covers most of this. You know that if you check out a book and it returns damaged, or you don't return it at all, that you are responsible and liable for that. And we decided that the same thing applies for the Library of Things, and we don't need to add extra steps which might limit access or prevent patrons from feeling comfortable checking out the Library of Thing items.
I'm sorry, Daniel, we just, we have a couple of questions. I'm catching up.
Yes, I know waivers are, let me go back, but
Oh, yeah.
yes.
So the first question on the waivers was, so you no longer make people sign the waivers, they're just in the kit?
Yes, they're just in the kit because it explains also not just the price breakdown, but like the loan period. It explains that it can't be put in the book drop, for example. It has to be returned in person and at the Baldwinsville Library. And then some other, like it includes my contact information on the bottom. It includes that they can't disassemble or attempt to fix it themselves, etc. So I understand they might not read it, even if it's in the kit. But when we were handing people waivers, they were just signing it and not reading it anyway. So we just kind of decided, at least we've been probably got rid of it several months ago, 8-ish months ago. We haven't seen any difference in the state that items were returned.
So then we have another question. Why do we have to have waivers?
So I know, yeah, I know some libraries mainly do it just for liability issues, if they're circulating things that might be dangerous for patrons to use, and they're worried that the library could be liable for, I was using the soldering iron and it burned my finger. Our lawyer told us that wouldn't be a problem. I'm not a legal expert, so all I know is we discussed it, and in terms of between the library director and the library board, they agreed that the requirements for the library card were applicable to the Library of Thing items. Now, if I were to circulate like a power drill, I probably would require something a little more advanced. I know some libraries, for very expensive items, like some do circulate like really nice telescopes. You have to make an appointment beforehand, and you meet with a staff member and they go over all of these things in detail with you before they'll let you circulate the item. So if you do have an idea of something, even like a big tool set, you could also follow that process where you would meet with the patron and talk to them about it before they checked it out.
Okay. So we've got 2 more questions. The first was, would you be able to share a link to the lunchbox cases you use?
Yes.
Okay.
There is like specific brand and everything. Oh, they're so good. It was such a good find.
Yeah, you could send that to me later, or if you have it today. Yeah. And then the last question we have so far, at some point, would you please speak to whether or not insects, pet hair, grime, and germs have been a concern or problem?
Yes, that's a great question. I've experienced that a little bit. I would say more than anything, it's sand because we circulate a few cameras that people take on trips, and they come back like with sand on them. So most of this time, I know it has happened once in particular, and I contacted the patron. They just to let them know in general, like you can't return it like this. You are welcome to check it out again and use it, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, but like at least needs to be a little bit wiped down. But I haven't really experienced any other problems besides like a little bit of sand in that instance. I know other libraries have, and they've had to like upon returning, like if the circulation staff member or whomever opened it and didn't like the way it looked, would not accept it as a return, and that they would have to take care and clean it before giving it back. But and if there were ever complaints that they didn't want to do that, that would come to me. But that has never happened to me before.
Thank you.
Most people really like, especially patrons, are for the most part that I've interacted also with other libraries, do like take the responsibility pretty seriously and treat the items quite respectfully. So if you want, we can move to the other, I know, tricky part, which is creating MARC records for your items. I do know only of one library that I've interacted with that did not create MARC records for them and did not have them in their catalog, and just kind of like through an Excel sheet kept track of the patron that was checking out the item. If that's the method you'd like to take, more power to you. I get it. But we don't make MARC records at Baldwinsville specifically. So I have to reach out to either the central library or one of the other libraries in our county to create the MARC record for me. And so what I've started to do is I just gather all the information myself, and then I send it to one of those people who then just format it and create the actual record. So I'm not sure how it works there, but my general tips is the more information that you put in your MARC record, the better. So including like on the patron side of the catalog, when they see the description, firstly, you want that to be a detailed, but also like very enticing description. So usually I would grab like the product description and make some edits and changes to that, and then include that in the record and on the patron side of the catalog so that they can see it. You want it to be like just like engaging and enticing, but also a little more descriptive so they know what it is. And you also want to be clear, we're shifting towards including specifically what items are in there and the price of the items on the patron side of the catalog as well, just to be as transparent as possible. So here I've included like some of the other MARC record components, including what lines there are that you might want to include. In terms of, we do include where the item must be returned, how the item must be returned in terms of bringing it into the library and not in the Dropbox. You want include a variety of subject and genre terms, so increase discoverability on the patron side of the catalog. A variety of titles, like the example we have is for the record player, but it's Victrola, like turntable, record table. So you want to include different alternate tags and titles as much as possible in there, especially if you make the kit and it's not something as straightforward as a record player. So I would put stop motion animation as a tag, and I would include document viewer camera and the specific brand, which is Hue. And I would include even like plastic figurines because they're in there. Just there's, in my experience, I don't think there's as much information as you can include, the better. I wouldn't shy away from making your MARC record as full as possible, this is one of the first ones that we used, the record player. The ones we have now are really, I think, a lot heftier and a lot easier for patients if they're just searching like stop motion or even just like animation, just looking for anything to make sure that the kit comes up as one of those items. But if you have more questions specifically about how we create the MARC records, I can answer them. But I would say it's not as big of a hurdle as one may worry or expect. I hadn't created MARC records before, but got the hang of it. And as I mentioned earlier, in terms of if you're starting your library of things, even with items you currently have, the first thing you want is a specific library of things, shelf location, and collection code. And then I've created a record set in RILS to have all of them in one spot. So all my library of things are easy for me to access and see what's in, what's not in, mending, etc. in one spot. But the library of things shelf location and collection code is definitely your first priority. So it's seen as one collective collection. Yeah, but if you have more questions about MARC records, we'll go through that later. Let's see. I'll just give a quick overview about marketing. This is the sign that we have on the side of our cabinet that includes what's in our library of things. Again, I would say as soon as you put it out and start describing it as a library of things, a lot more people have heard that term by now, and it's already like engaging and markets itself. So before I was a librarian, I worked as a news reporter. So I could say that reaching out to your local newspaper, reaching out to your local news station, like you won't even have to fight for them to come and cover that you're doing a library of things. I would have been ecstatic. I mean, reaching out to them, giving them story ideas is always highly recommend it. I mean, we were doing multiple stories a day, like people telling us and giving us tips. It was great. So you could start there. I mean, maybe you can get your local broadcast station to come in and maybe interview some patrons, interview some staff, show off some of the items, and just signage in the library, of course. And then I would say my other marketing tip that worked really well for us is we do have a big area in the middle of the library where we have an art show every month. Make your library of things an art show for a month. So you can put the actual physical items in display cases. You could have some of the videos that maybe a patron made on the GoPro or the stop motion camera, have them playing on a laptop in one of the display cases. Show the creations that your patrons have used and made when they took out these items. And it's just, they're going to see that as soon as they come in. It's going to be engaging. It's going to be a great way to show off how these items are actually used, and a great form of assessment for you as well to see. Yeah, but I wouldn't worry about marketing it too much. I don't think, and similarly in terms of location for your library of things, you're not going to need as much space as you think. It really does market itself, and things are going to be checked out pretty frequently. I'm pretty confident that most of them would be checked out pretty frequently and pretty immediately. And then in terms of the last thing I'll talk about a little bit is assessment. So how I assess the items in the collection as a whole is on a pretty specific schedule. I do it at least usually like 4 times a year, just to get an overview in terms of the first thing I look at is circulation numbers. And we have some patron feedback forms that we include in the kits. I don't have them always in there because sometimes people check it out a lot, and it's just like a nice thing to include every once in a while. And when I do include them, I put them all in at once and email the staff to let them know that, just to double check to see if like there's a filled out one when the item is returned. And similarly, like when you're marketing the collection, every once in a while to have, you can also include like a little flyer in the kit that, oh, in April, we're going to do a show where we want to put on and showcase some of the work that you've been using, how you've used the items. So if you circulate maybe some kids' toys that have Play-Doh in them, or some origami kits, maybe some of the patrons who checked out that kit could bring in their items. If you circulate camping gear, which is what we're looking into also, maybe, oh, I don't know, anything that they, you could always bring like patrons in to talk about how they used it, or if they went on that camping trip and they like found certain like flowers or things that they preserved, bringing that in and showing how that works. So just creating like physical examples of how the items are continually used is a great form of assessment. And also it's going to be good for your community to see. It's good for your director and the library board to see that these items are being used in a variety of ways. I mean, even if someone wants to come in and share their family like vacation photos for like, awesome. Or if they did a movie night in their backyard with a projector, great. We can come in, either talk about that. It works out. People are excited to talk about the things that they did. So it works out pretty great. And then the other thing I would say is basically your peace of mind at the end. The Lego kit, if I decide in the next few weeks that just maintaining that is becoming too overwhelming, it might need to be like shifted and changed. I might just, instead of including it as a kit, it could just be a bunch of Legos in one container. That way, whatever gets returned, whatever doesn't. It's just a bunch of Legos people could take home. So in terms of assessment, you also have to think of your own time, your own effort, and how that's working out. And then the last thing I have, just still similarly to assessment and evaluation, these are the questions that I put on the form that I include in the kit. And in terms of not just the success of the library of things, but to think about them in terms of selection of items, to ask them to patrons in terms to get like suggestions for other things or how it's being used, especially the instruction ones. That I think is like also a little bit tricky. Do you just include the instructions that come with the physical item? Do you want to make your own instructions, etc.? So just getting feedback that way over time is works out really well. You can always include more instructions later. You could circulate the GoPro for 2 years and then decide you need more instructions and put that in there. There's no harm in that. So these are just the questions that we ask, and I get usually some pretty great ideas and some pretty silly stories from like the Tony Box ones and stuff. So it's really great. I mean, it's very amusing to me. But other than that, that's all I really had. And then if there were any more questions or anything.
Sure. Yeah, we have a couple more questions.
Sure.
First, was there a resource you used for learning how to make MARC records?
Just the one class that was required in library school that I took in 2016. Other than that, in terms of when I first started, because our system already had items and other branches already had library of things, I pulled up a lot of their MARC records and would just use that as basic templates to create my own.
Great. And then the other question, you did sort of answer a little bit of this, but Kate came in late because we had our email issue. So she said, I missed the first few minutes, but do you have a picture of your shelf that you use for your library of things? Do patrons have access to grab what they want, or do staff have to retrieve it?
Right. So I should take a picture of the cabinet, but it's just a big metal cabinet. It's not very attractive. That just has glass doors. It's probably what, like 8 feet tall and 3 feet wide. And it is locked. So there's that big sign on the side that says what's in it. And it's right next to the circulation desk. So when they come into the library, they can see it. And also if they're waiting in the circulation area, they can see it. With the glass doors, you do see inside, but most of them are just cases. So you don't really see the objects that much. So I'm thinking of other ways to maybe make it a little more clear, but for now, the circulation staff do have to come from around the desk, unlock the cabinet, and then grab it and relock the cabinet and check out the item. I know what I saw recently is that a lot of libraries have done like big pegboards near the entryway or like right at the circulation desk with just big photos of all of the items. Which looks pretty cool. I like the idea that it's on a pegboard. It also works really well. It's attention grabbing. And then you could still store the items in a similar big cabinet, or if you have like a back workspace or something. I like the combination of both. I like having, I think if we had some kind of board that had photos of it, but also like that they could see the cabinet so they could see the size of the package, and is also nice. But for us, that's what we use. I know in our county, most of them use some form of that. Some have multiple cabinets, but most of us have tried to keep them physically in the library so that patrons can see at least most of them, even though they're in the packaging, can still see them.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, if you think of any, you can type them in chat. Dania did say she would share her slides, so I will email those out to you after our presentation. And if there are no more questions, we will just say thank you, Dania. That was a really great presentation. And yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I hope,
let you go.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got a last question.
Oh, sure.
On the shelves, are the cases labeled or ordered in some way to make them easier to find?
Yes, so I try to make sure that they're the tag is facing out. So the tag that says what's the name of the kit or the name of the item is pretty big. So if I fold it outward, you can see that it says like projector and screen or GoPro camera, etc., or Tonybox kit. So we try to make those tags facing out so you can see them. And then in terms of order, there is like a black, the edge of the doors are dark, so you can't see through them. So I try to push everything to the sides so that you can see it as clearly as possible, and keep all the same things on one shelf because the cabinet has multiple shelves. So all the Chromebooks are on the top shelf, all the Tonyboxes, and like we have percussion instruments, we keep those on the bottom. So like somewhat similar items grouped together, like the cameras I try to keep together. In that case, like if you do specifically, I always like to check out a camera. You can quickly glance and see if something's in or not, because it's usually in a similar spot. Could even label the shelves. I guess I could. I haven't thought of that before.
You too can.
But for us, it's just like that for now.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and Casey just had a question for me about reaching out to us if we wanted help adding items like this to our collection. So yes, Casey, I'll be glad to help you to talk about that with you and get the ILS department involved as far as cataloging. So
sure. And if you need, can always access our MARC records. I can. We're welcome. I have permission to share any of those if you'd like.
Great, great.
From our end.
All right, great. Well, thank you again, Dania, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.